I actually kind of disagree with you guys a little bit on the process like free market capitalism. I think that Tucker Carlson probably has the best critiques of the free market from the right recently. I don't know if you guys saw his debate with Ben Shapiro, but I think there's a lot of issues that he brought up, especially around the ideas of automation and so on. And one of the critiques that he argued against Shapiro was that he said, well, if you live in a, let's say, Midwestern town, or I guess in the equivalent here, one people, I think the mic is off.
There we go. That's better. I guess all the equivalent, the northern coal towns here. When the industry dies, as it did with steel and with the coal, sort of in the 80s, people didn't necessarily just up and move to the big city to get a new job. Some weren't able to. Look at the steel workers. They can't just instantly learn to code, for example, which is obviously what we've taunted all the journalists about who got sacked from Vice and BuzzFeed and the others recently. So what do you say to those critiques that people that like Carlson put, that the free market is not a god, it is not some Nicene creed, as he said, and that really the free market is the best system we have right now, but if it doesn't work, we don't have to stick dogmatically to it all the time. Just want to see what your response to that would be.
Well, Charlie debated Tucker Carlson on this, so I'll let him take it away.
I actually had a conversation with Tucker about it. So Tucker in the debate said we should look at government more like our family. And then I kind of didn't have the best response in the moment when I was back and forth, so I've done more thinking about it. So here's how I should have responded. Our church should be our church, our family should be our family, meaning our nuclear family, and our communities should be our communities, and government should be none of those things. That's the best answer I could have given to that. So should we dogmatically believe in anything? Probably not. Should we look at the data and the facts and the realities of what the free market has brought us? Absolutely. I think Tucker recognizes that too. I think he's trying to push the limits of, can government fix some of these issues and problems? I would make the argument that every time we've tried to do that, government has actually exacerbated the very problems government has tried to fix. So a great example, people like Tucker Carlson were talking like that, and I love Tucker, he's a friend of mine, but it's okay to disagree amongst friends, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. In the 1960s, some Republicans supported the Great Society under Lyndon Baines Johnson, because they said, we don't like government doing too much, but we do agree that single motherhood is a problem. And this is where I'm going to yield to Candace to contribute to this. Because they said, maybe government can do something to help single mothers. And what ended up happening is single motherhood skyrocketed over the next 20, 30 years because single mothers would be able to get checks as government assistance. But what happened when they got married? The checks went away. So what did single mothers stop doing? Stopped getting married. So you're incentivizing bad behavior. So you've got to be really careful that sometimes a government solution to a problem could actually make that problem infinitely worse.
And I think it's important just to note sometimes that the government is run by human beings. It's weird to me that sometimes people dissociate and they think of it as this like perfect structure, and like if we're having trouble at home, we'll just pass it off to the government as if the government's run by like Autobots or something. And truth is that they do exacerbate the problem, and it's been proven 1,000 times over in American society, and especially as a case study, the black community. The black community, believe it or not, was outpacing the white community in America in terms of economic growth under Jim Crow. Under Jim Crow laws, we were doing better economically, outpacing whites in our society. And the second that we married ourselves to the government, the second that the government came, and this was by design. Lyndon Baines Johnson was an avowed racist president who was concerned because we had gotten the right to vote, and he wanted to come up with a system because Lyndon Baines Johnson is a human being. He's a president and he's a part of the government, but he was a human being, and he was a corrupt human being who wanted to make sure that the black vote could always be controlled. And what better way to do that than to say that the government is going to help you? When in reality, when you think about the welfare system, it gives you just a little bit. And it keeps you coming back. And in terms of the single motherhood rate, as Charlie just mentioned, it incentivized that bad behavior. People stopped marrying the father of their children because the government said, hey, if you don't marry the father of your children, we'll actually give you more money, right? Why get $500 a month? I'm making up a number here. We'll give you $1,000 if the father's not here. And they actually employ the government. We have a division that goes and inspects homes to make sure fathers aren't inside of them. So I think the most important thing to remember is that when people talk about the government as a solution, I try to always remind that the government is run by human beings, and if human beings couldn't fix something within the home just because they work for the government, they're probably not going to be out to fix it because they went into the government.
And that's so right when you see here in the UK with the government running things, because the free market, the whole point, the government was there for limited regulation. That was supposed to be what it's supposed to do. It wasn't supposed to kind of run every single aspect of people's lives. But let's take kind of when we were looking for green technologies here, you might have not heard recently in the news that the government was looking for green new technologies. The person they appointed to help them as their czar looking over this took around £600,000 from green new companies for technologies that maybe gave 1 or 2% extra investment, extra energy from green sources. And you think, well, that's not going to deliver what we need as a population to survive. But the government's still pushing that idea because the person they've paid money to do is in bed with other companies. That's obviously not how the free market is supposed to work. And I think we've kind of been shortchanged as a generation. The last 20 years from Blair onwards, where we've been politically aware, we've seen basically the government in bed with big business, not allowing free market principles to actually work. That's not how the free market works, and so we get a bad idea of that. I think once the government goes back to that, and maybe we can push them back to that if we get rid of some certain people in the government, then I think actually you'd see the free market working at its optimum, delivering actually for you, the consumer, rather than for the government's interest.
Yeah, I mean, I talking about free markets, I think is a very interesting discussion topic, because in the UK, we are frequently sold the idea that free markets are running our economy, right? Okay, so let me ask the question to the audience. If you want to catch a train in this country, all right, and you live in the southwest of England, what train line can you catch? The Southwestern line. There's no other option, right? You have to catch Southwestern. If you live in the south, you can only catch the Southern line. If you live in the southeast, you can only catch Southeastern Rail, right? That's not a free market, okay? And yet Labour will continually tell you that free markets have ruined our rail network, right? It's not a free market. You can't make a decision as a consumer if you're monopolized by which train line you can choose, right? So therefore, it's not a free market. So our free markets, as someone said, Nicene Creed, I think that's no, we should never dogmatically stick to one idea. Absolutely not. But have they formed the best system to lift millions of people out of poverty? Yes, they have. So therefore, the facts and data are very much on the side of free markets at the moment. In the future, who knows where that will go? But yeah, dogmatic insistence that one form of government is the best. No, like humanity evolves, right? We've evolved from the Middle Ages. We're currently in a system now where billions of people are being lifted out of poverty by market forces. But don't ever let the left in this country take the narrative of free markets and say they've ruined your life, because they haven't, right? They've actually enfranchised us, right? I mean, and the other thing I'd also say is that the current on free markets, which is global, right? So at the moment it's hilarious. I mean, you've got Trump announcing tariffs, okay? And the Europeans are suddenly up in arms about tariffs, right? And yet the European Union is built on tariffs, right? I do a lot of business with China, okay? If you go into China, the Chinese import tariffs are horrific. And yet here's everyone going, oh, Trump can't have tariffs, right? One of the most interesting meetings was the G20 in, I think it was Toronto. And Trump comes in and says, tariffs, right? And Merkel and Macron are up in arms and going, oh, but free markets, right? So Trump comes in the next morning, and this is the part that is never reported, of course, by the media who hate Trump. He comes and he goes, okay, tariffs, but no subsidies either, right? And the Europeans dissolve because they can't understand a system of economy which doesn't revolve around subsidies. Hilarious story from Britain's past. Okay, sorry, I know I'm taking a bit of time. But hilarious story from Britain's past. When Britain was in charge of India, okay, the British were like, we don't like snakes, all right? Really annoying snakes everywhere, okay? So they incentivized the local Indians to kill the snakes. So for every snake you kill, we'll give you some money. So in a brilliant stroke of entrepreneurial genius, okay, the Indians went out and made snake farms so that they could kill thousands of snakes, because every time they killed one, the British gave them money, right? That is what subsidies do. It's exactly the same system in Europe, right? Exactly. So therefore, it's like the free market as a concept, coming back to your question, because it is a really interesting topic. The free market as a concept is under attack consistently by people who have no comprehension of what the free market actually is. Okay? And it's exactly the same in this country, right? Automation, every generation has been sold the idea that some part of your life will be like overturned by automation, right? I mean, and it's exactly the same going back 100 years, like that we were never going to find jobs for the people who lost their jobs when the rickshaw drivers were overturned by automated cars. Like, it's just, every generation fears automation because it's a threat to job security, but every generation finds new jobs.
I want to compliment George. There were some great points there, and the rail one's really interesting because in the States we actually have private rail in Southeast Florida, and it's quicker, better, faster, cheaper than any other government rail that you could possibly imagine, and they just built it. And so it can be done through actually private free enterprise, and it's this idea that the government must be the only one that does public infrastructure projects is absurd. And kind of what is the free market for those that might have never heard it before? Essentially, the free market is allowing and empowering the individual to buy what you want to buy, sell what you want to sell without intrusive government interference. Essentially empowering entrepreneurs, allowing good ideas to thrive, succeed, and strive towards better products, services for everybody. And essentially, in a free market, there's one word that keeps it all together, and that's competition. You said that, Joel, so brilliantly, that if you have to compete in a marketplace, good ideas will win time and time again. That's why products get better. That's why we have medical advancements. That's why I'm guessing most of you have a smartphone in your right-hand pocket. And 10 years ago, that technology would have been considered fringe at best. We take for granted the advancements a free market delivers to us every single day. But it's not just the free market, it's the entrepreneur. That's the key word. Collectivism disempowers the entrepreneur. The free market empowers an entrepreneur to take the risk, start the business, and to go to a higher level. And all of you have benefited from it. You could hate capitalism to your core. You could hate free markets and think you want collectivism. No. The vaccines that you go after, the medicine that you can use, the Uber that you drive in, the Starbucks that you walk through, the abundance of food that you enjoy, the lighting that we have today is all thanks to a free market. If you don't believe me, try to go to Venezuela right now. Their entire country's in pitch black darkness. Babies are dying in the hospital right now because they don't have power in Venezuela. That's socialism, which was the second richest economy in the world 60 years ago with the most natural gas reserves of any country in the entire world. Only collectivism could screw up a country with that kind of bountiful natural resources. Only socialism could do that. George, that's a great point about the snakes too. I'm going to use that as well. So
it's just true. You incentivize.
You're going to get more of that.
Yeah, exactly, behavior. Of course. It's like, but you see it the whole time in the UK as well. I mean, like, I'm sure most of you in this room are aware that we massively subsidise green energy in this country, right? Massively. Okay. Now what do you have? You have, like, I have a mate who lives down in Devon, okay, and he's got a couple of streams which run through his property, and he's put a water mill in the stream to generate electricity to sell back to the grid. And the more he produces, the more the government pays him. So as a result, every time I go down there, it's like massive. The house is so hot because he's running all the heaters on full the whole time, right? And all the lights are on all the time. Like, this is how subsidies work, and this is how the free market.
It's more energy inefficient.
Yeah, it's totally energy efficient.
It has a bigger carbon footprint.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result, like, the free market would never do that, right? But it's a subsidy-based system, and in Europe. And in the UK, we're constantly told the free market ruins things, when actually the free market has never really been tried. And look, there are problems with the free market as well. Look, greed drives the free market. And of course, there needs to be checks and balances on humanity, right? We're all humans. We're all inherently, there's always a bad part of us, right? And greed drives, I mean, I've seen it in the city. I mean, greed drives a lot of people, right? And of course, there need to be checks and balances. But generally, as I said, the free market has been a force for good in this world.
Next